My name is Emma, and I'm 32 years old. Last month, I watched my 3 siblings celebrate selling our family home for $1.2 million, dividing the money between themselves while telling me I didn't deserve a penny. Today, they're facing fraud charges and begging me to drop the lawsuit. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Growing up as the youngest of 4 children in the Morrison family, I learned early that I was different. While my siblings, Jessica, David, and Michael, were popular, athletic, and charming, I was the quiet one who preferred books to parties and spent weekends helping Dad in his workshop instead of going to football games. Our parents, Robert and Linda Morrison, built their dream home in 1985 on 5 acres of land in Westchester County. Dad was a successful contractor who'd started his business from nothing, and Mom was a teacher who'd inherited a small fortune from her parents. That house wasn't just property. It was where Dad taught me woodworking, where Mom and I planted gardens, where every birthday and holiday unfolded. My siblings saw it differently. To them, it was just valuable real estate in a prime location. Jessica, the eldest at 40, was the golden child. Beautiful, married to her investment banker, living in a Manhattan penthouse. But behind the perfect facade, she was drowning in debt from failed business ventures she'd hidden from her husband. David, 38, was the athlete who'd blown out his knee in college and never quite recovered, emotionally or financially. He'd bounced between jobs, always waiting for his big break, while Dad quietly paid his rent. Michael, 36, was the charmer who could sell ice to Eskimos. He used that talent to run through a series of failed startups, each funded by loans from our parents that he swore he'd pay back when he made it big. And then there was me, the disappointment. You see, I didn't want to be a doctor or lawyer like they expected. I became a carpenter, just like Dad. My siblings found it embarrassing. Our sister works with her hands, Jessica would say at cocktail parties, like it was something shameful. She could have been anything, and she chose that. What they didn't understand was that Dad lit up when I told him I wanted to follow in his footsteps. While they were too busy to visit, I spent every weekend at the house, learning the business, understanding construction, and most importantly, being there. Mom got sick first. Alzheimer's, the cruel disease that steals a person piece by piece. My siblings had a family meeting about putting her in a home. We can't be expected to drop everything, Jessica said. We have lives. I moved back home that day. For 3 years, I was Mom's caregiver. I adjusted my work schedule, learned about medications and therapy, and held her hand through the confusion and fear. My siblings visited occasionally, usually when they needed something. David came by when he needed money. Michael showed up to get Dad to invest in another scheme. Jessica graced us with her presence on holidays, spending most of the time on her phone. When Mom passed, they all gave beautiful speeches at the funeral about family and love. I bit my tongue. 2 months later, Dad had his first heart attack. We need to talk about the house, Jessica announced at the hospital. Dad was still in the ICU. He's not even dead yet, I snapped. Don't be dramatic, David said. We're just being practical. This place is worth a fortune now. When the time comes. Get out, I said. All of you. Get out. They left, but not before Michael muttered. Always so emotional. This is why you'll never amount to anything. Dad recovered, but he was different. Quieter. One evening, as we sat on the porch he'd built with his own hands, he said, Emma, I need to tell you something. He revealed that 5 years ago, after helping my siblings with yet another financial crisis, he'd made a decision. He'd quietly transferred the deed to the house to me, along with several other properties he'd acquired over the years. But why keep it secret? I asked. Because they'd have pressured you to sell, to give them money. They'd have made your life hell. This way, when I'm gone, it's clean. You took care of your mother. You take care of me. The house should be yours. Dad, they're going to be furious. He took my hand. You're the only one who sees this house as more than money. You see it as home. Promise me you'll keep it that way. I promised. Dad lived another 2 years. 2 years where I was his caregiver, his companion, his business partner. My siblings' visits became even rarer. It's depressing, Jessica complained. He doesn't even recognize us half the time. That was a lie. Dad recognized them perfectly. He just didn't have much to say to children who saw him as an inconvenience. The morning Dad passed, I was holding his hand. My siblings arrived hours later, after I'd already made arrangements. At the funeral, they gave more beautiful speeches. Jessica talked about how Dad inspired her success. David shared stories about Dad attending his games that happened 20 years ago. Michael spoke about business lessons Dad taught him. Lessons he'd clearly never learned. I didn't speak. I'd already said everything that mattered to the one person who needed to hear it. The day after the funeral, they called a family meeting at the house. I knew what was coming. "We need to discuss the estate," Jessica said, already acting as executor. "I've spoken to a realtor. The house is worth at least $1.2 million in this market. Split 4 ways, that's $300,000 each. More than enough to cover my debts," David added, not even pretending to be subtle. "I've already got investors lined up for my new company," Michael chimed in. "This timing is perfect." I sat quietly, letting them plan. "Emma, you'll need to move out within 30 days, Jessica continued. "I know you've been living here, but it's time to move on. Maybe this will motivate you to do something more with your life than carpentry." "I'm not moving out," I said calmly. They laughed. Actually laughed. "You don't have a choice," David said. "Majority rules. 3 against 1. "I'm not moving out," I repeated, "because this is my house." The laughter stopped. Jessica's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about? Dad transferred the deed to me 5 years ago. The house is mine. Has been for years." The room exploded. They accused me of lying, of manipulation, of elder abuse. They demanded to see proof. I showed them the deed, the transfer documents, all legally filed and notarized. "You conniving little," Jessica started. "Careful," I warned. "You're in my house." They stormed out, but not before Michael shouted, "This isn't over." He was right. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Mark Chun, a local realtor. "Ms. Morrison, I'm calling to confirm the details for the closing next week. Your siblings said you were traveling and asked me to handle everything." My blood ran cold. "What closing?" "For the sale of 47 Maple Grove Road. We're set to close next Thursday at $1.2 million. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. What my siblings had done was brazen even for them. They'd forged my signature on sales documents, created a fake power of attorney, and actually found a buyer for MY House. They'd even gone so far as to schedule the closing while I was supposed to be at a carpentry convention in Seattle, a trip I'd mentioned months ago but had canceled to deal with Dad's estate. The closing day arrived. I'd instructed my lawyer to let it play out. I wanted to see how far they'd go. I parked down the street and watched as my siblings arrived at the house with the buyers. A young couple who looked thrilled to be getting such a beautiful property. Jessica was playing the gracious host, giving them a tour of our family home, and sharing fake sentimental stories about how hard this was for all of us. When they gathered in the living room for the final signing, I walked in. "Emma." Jessica's face went white. "What are you doing here?" "I thought you were in Seattle." "Changed my mind," I said pleasantly. "Figured I should be here for such a big moment." The buyers looked confused. The realtor, Mark, shifted nervously. "Shall we sign?" Michael said quickly, trying to push papers toward me. "Oh, I don't think so," I said, pulling out my folder. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid my siblings have wasted your time. They can't sell this house because they don't own it. I do." I laid out the deed, the transfer documents, everything. The realtor's face went from confused to horrified as he realized he'd been party to fraud. "This is fake," David shouted. "She's lying." "Feel free to check the county records," I said calmly. "It's all there. Has been for 5 years." Jessica tried one last manipulation. "Emma, please. We're family. You know Dad would have wanted us to share." "You were always the disappointment," I interrupted, throwing her favorite phrase back at her. "That's what you've told me my whole life. The family embarrassment. The one who chose to be just a carpenter like Dad." I turned to the buyers, who looked mortified. "I'm sorry you were caught up in this. Mr. Chun, I suggest you check your license requirements for verifying ownership before facilitating sales." Then I looked at my siblings. "You have 5 minutes to get off my property before I call the police." "You can't do this," Michael shouted. "We'll sue." "Go ahead," I said. "I'm sure the court will be very interested in the forged documents and fraudulent sale attempt." They left, but not quietly. Over the next weeks, they tried everything. They contested the deed transfer, claiming Dad wasn't competent. My lawyer shut that down with medical records and witness testimonies. They tried to claim I'd unduly influenced him. The judge laughed them out of court when presented with evidence of their financial exploitation over the years. They tried to break into the house one night, apparently to look for additional documents. The security system I'd installed captured everything. David was arrested and spent a night in jail before Jessica bailed him out. Finally, they played their last card: public humiliation. They went on social media, painting me as the evil sister who'd stolen their inheritance. They shared old photos, told sob stories about how I'd isolated Dad and turned him against them. It backfired spectacularly. Dad's old employees, neighbors who'd watched me care for both parents, Mom's friends from her book club, they all came forward with the truth. Stories poured out about how my siblings had treated our parents, how they'd only shown up when they needed money, how I'd been the only one there for years. The final blow came when Jessica's husband found out about her debts and discovered she'd been planning to use her share of the house sale to cover them without telling him. He filed for divorce. David's landlord, tired of excuses, evicted him. Michael's investors, spooked by the fraud allegations, pulled out of his latest venture. Last week, I got a call from Jessica. She was crying. "Emma, please. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We're desperate. Can't you help us? We're family." "No," I said simply. "Family shows up. Family cares. Family doesn't try to steal from each other. You had decades to be family. You chose to be strangers who shared DNA. You're really going to let us suffer? I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "You did this to yourselves. You sold a house that wasn't yours to sell. You committed fraud. You tried to steal from your own sister. Whatever happens now is just consequences. But the house, it's worth so much. You could help us all and still have plenty. The house is not for sale," I said. "It will never be for sale. Dad built this house with his own hands. Mom planted every flower in the garden. This is where they lived, where they loved, where they died. It's not a commodity. It's home." "You're just like him," she spat. "Stubborn and sentimental. No wonder you never amounted to anything." I laughed. "Jessica, I own a construction company with 15 employees. I have 6 rental properties. I'm worth more than all 3 of you combined. The difference is, I didn't need to advertise it or use it to make myself feel important. I learned that from Dad. Real worth isn't about what you have, it's about what you do with it." She hung up. That was the last time any of them contacted me. I still live in the house. I've renovated it, updating things while keeping Dad's craftsmanship intact. The workshop where he taught me everything is now where I train apprentices. Mom's garden blooms every spring, maintained by a local youth group I sponsor. On weekends, I host dinners for Dad's old employees and their families. The house is filled with laughter and stories. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted, a home that brings people together, not drives them apart. Sometimes I think about my siblings. Jessica, last I heard, is working as a real estate agent, ironically enough. David is living with a friend, working at a sporting goods store. Michael is back to his old pattern, trying to charm investors, though word about the fraud attempt has made that harder. They could have had everything. Not just money, but a home, a legacy, a connection to parents who loved them despite their flaws. All they had to do was show up, care, be present. Instead, they chose greed and got nothing. There's a plaque by the front door now. Dad would have hated it, too showy, he'd say, but I put it up anyway. It reads, "The Morrison House. Built by Robert Morrison, 1985. Home is where love lives." My siblings thought I was the disappointment because I chose to be like Dad, working with my hands, building things that last, valuing family over fortune. They spent their lives chasing status and money, only to lose both. Funny thing about disappointments. Sometimes they're the only ones worth trusting with what really matters. The house stands strong, just like Dad built it. And just like he taught me, I'll make sure it stays that way. Not as an asset or an investment, but as what it always was, home. My siblings wanted $1.2 million. What they lost was worth so much more. But they'll never understand that. Some people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Me? I'm just a carpenter's daughter who learned the difference. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.